We have made it. Excellent. My Riverside is live streaming again, so I didn't have to switch it up to one of the others. I like Riverside. I just had to, I don't know, I had to wait because I think I had hit my limit or something like that. I don't know. I did something and now I can live stream again as a host. What's going on, guys? It is Zerilath Eternal. It is a good Sunday live stream we're going to do today. This is a long friend of mine. This is Ashley Vise of Aesthetic Infusions. Ashley and I are schoolmates, if you will. We're both with Seth Boza in, I'm going to attempt to pronounce it properly, of Horgraf Komendra Huithaz Ormir, or the Temple of the White Dragon. Anyway, it's taken me a very long time to get that off of my tongue, and I've been working on Old Norse.
I think that was pretty good. You did better than I could have.
I tried. There was one point when he first actually orated it on a thing. I went back over the 5 second time that he's saying the name. What is that? Because then every time I go home, I was like, I'm going to say that. Blah 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 blah. No, and then all I can remember is Komen. Like it's always the first one I miss. So it's like I got the Komendra Huitazormir, but then it's like what exactly was the last one, and where did it fit in the whole line? It's very weird the way that works. Anyway, that's Temple of the White Dragon on Black Earth Productions. So Ashley and I are both students of Sethicus, how we know each other, and Ashley is extraordinary with medicine, with a big focus on the various things that cause inflammation in the body, both chemical and otherwise, because she is applying her work on all the levels. Because this is also an example of application. She's a much better student in the school than I am on that level. And that's why we're here today, because I've really been thinking a hell of a lot on one angle of things with the whole Ozempic phenomenon, bringing on GLP-1. And then I caught this crazy video essay about how supermarkets all over the place, the entire food industry, is readjusting how it does nutrition for the GLP-1 customers, because their nutritional habits are so out of whack, and there's so many of them that it's made shopping in the grocery stores a little bit weirder because of the way, it's not just like some new product. It's just like you have to look at what they changed about old products and everything else. And so that kind of inspired this right now for that reason, because like literally everybody is talking about this, because the physiognomy that comes with the long-term GLP-1 use is basically a withering disease. And I mean, I'm sorry, Kelly, you were a really cute chick before you did this. I would have just loved it you'd stayed a chubby chick if that was the way you were gonna go. You weren't obese. And now you look like a vampiress. Like in a unhealthy way. Right? It's like it's ghouling out people. Right? And it's very much we were talking about this as predicate. This is how the vampires, as we know them in the temple, this is one of the ways that they ghoul people, right? With these dependencies. I mean, Baron Harkonnen in Dune, he would poison the food of his slaves, so that way he could cure that. It's just like Frank knew in the 50s and the 60s when he was writing this shit, when he's conceiving it. He knew, right? These are the vampires. And they were pedophiles also, and Frank made no apologies about that, as his favorite fuckboys looked like Paul Atreides. It specifically said that in the book. And they didn't they haven't Vilvenue doesn't even have the courage to fucking do that. But then again, considering his bosses, this is why people say that Dune can never be fully properly adapted. But anyway, that's maybe a little bit of why we're here, because we're both on the melange. So Ashley, let's talk about what's going on with what GLP-1 is, and just everything happening in the market. Like, if you know of anything else, because I'm not 100% sure. I've got a good tertiary awareness of things, but you're very in tune with these things. So GLP-1 and other things treating other stuff that is so far beyond you just taking care of yourself. Tell us a little bit about what's happening with the science and people.
Sure. First, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about my experience. So I'm not just talking, from the hip. I've been a nurse since 2012. I'm a registered nurse, and I own a management services organization for a wellness center and med spa. And I am in the know on a lot of the trends right now. I can see, people that fly towards the trends to throw away safety. And then I also see the slow grinding wheel of bureaucracy where things are not moving forward fast enough to modern trends that are actually beneficial. So it's kind of a paradox in that area, because you want to maintain safety and actually have, the key word in any medicine is evidence-based practice. But as we know, the journal articles and the evidence-based practice has been the holy scripture and very controlled on what studies are allowed to be put forth based on the narrative. So finding true clinical data that matches what you see face to face with the patient versus, what they say. We know that after all these years, what's it been since Rockefeller took over, that we've had a great poisoning occur on so many levels. And the good drugs that are necessary and required to keep people alive, like cardiac rhythm medications, epinephrine, so that if you're having a heart attack, you can stop that, all these things. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but everything is so contaminated now. Navigating that field is really complex. What I'm seeing right now, so GLP-1s initially came out with Ozempic. That was the first generation treatment. And then it was the tirzepatide. That was the second generation. I'm using generic names. You've got semaglutide is another name. Wegovy is another name for second generation. Semaglutide was first, Wegovy. And then now the new one that's coming out is retatrutide. All of these carry risks. There's almost nothing that comes from the pharmaceutical companies that don't have a batch of side effects, as everyone sees incessantly on their TV. Between every show, if they're watching TV, I try not to. Every once in a while I catch it and I want to basically frisbee it into the lake. But because every commercial is, and your side effects are this long list of death, dismemberment, and, horrendous things that you would never induce on yourself, but these carry side effects. The muscle wasting, of course, is systemic. It's not just that, you're losing a little bit of fat in the midline like you might want to. You're losing it in the entire body. And with the brain being made of fat, you're losing it there too. Your entire nervous system is covered in fat. That's the insulation, just like the plastic on any electrical cord is fat. That's your myelination, which you'll see with statins. Everybody touts statins so hard. I've got patients right now that I've seen that their doctor told them, hey, you have neuropathy, you're on a walker from statins, you can't feel your feet, and you constantly fall from statins. And I say, well, when did you stop taking them? And he said, no, they just upped the dose. I see that. And then on the backside, a 2.5-hour documentary came out about statins. So this fat wasting situation is a part of femininity, because in women, the facial fat produces a good portion of the estrogen, and that estrogen is going to keep you from getting osteoporosis, and it's also very cardioprotective. So you're going to be looking at early broken bones and heart attacks, and that's going to be in conjunction with the protein wasting. So you have 3 types of muscle in the body. You've got cardiac muscle, you've got like intestinal muscle, I forgot the name, and then you have skeletal muscle. So we all see the skeletal muscle when you mention Kelly Osbourne is, and there's so many others, her mother is just another one. You know, they put these people up in our face like they're some
Yeah.
sort of new normal,
Yeah.
and
And
it's
Kelly
not.
Sharon did make a public statement saying that you can go too far with it at the very least. She said, she's because obviously she's just a customer who's a celebrity with an experience, people listening to her. So, so she's somebody who did stop. I'm assuming that maybe Kelly stopped as well, right? But I'm sure, as you can see, she obviously took it a little bit further. Her mom, like Kelly, like I don't have as much to say about Sharon's appearance as I would Kelly, right? This is really my only reference. I'm a metalhead. This is my only reference point. It's the only time I take a glance at celebrityism.
So
It's just like, oh, it's because you were responsible for something amazing that I loved, so I'm paying a little bit of attention, right?
this first came into vogue with like the Roland and Martin show with Twiggy in the 60s. And then, of course, you saw the heroin chic carried through the supermodel phase with things like Kate Moss in the 90s, where they were so thin.
I know.
And of course, then you go back to Karen Carpenter. I mean, Karen Carpenter, when she started singing, Welcome Interplanetary Craft and all that, whatever she was doing in her little UFO fund was parallel to the same time whenever she started wasting away. I don't know if she was doing some
Mm.
backside ritual invocation or what she was doing, but
Yeah.
there was something going on. And there's something going on. What was the girl that was in Wicked? I forgot her name. It was
Right,
just in
right.
that.
Yeah, there's those two ladies that
Yeah, and they're super weird.
I think they're in a lesbian relationship now.
I can't even. But
I mean,
what I do know,
one of them is gonna be the Ellen DeGeneres in that relationship, and the other one's gonna be the one that got eaten.
I don't know, but it's all abnormal, and it's all trying to normalize the abnormal. Uh, in humans, our fat, makes us not have wrinkles. That's what people come to me for all the time that are older. They want fillers, which I'm completely getting away from that because I just don't want to be a part of it. I'm getting away from Botox. I don't want to be a part of it. The new studies show that it causes permanent microglial activation in the brain and psychopathic tendencies. I'm
Oof.
not going to be a part of that. And so in my movement away from all that, I have become a student of facial analysis, orthomolecular facial analysis, where I can look at someone's face and see where their lines are. And I know the correspondences to the organs in the different parts of the body and what that means for mineral deficiencies. This was developed in 1875 by Dr. Schussler when he began to tell about cell salts. And the face, like you were mentioning in physiognomy, that is an ancient science that goes back to ancient Greece. But the orthomolecular facial analysis was from 1875. He was the head doctor on an insane asylum in Germany and realized that all of the people that were there had traits that mirrored each other and traced it back to the farming practices for the food that was coming into the insane asylum. And he slowly began adding minerals and watching what went away and documented this over 30 or 40 years. He spoke 8 languages, including Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin. He was a genius. And his work has moved forward over the last 150 years, and he has been, it's a real science. I can do an epigenetic test on a hair follicle or genetic work and see those same mineral deficiencies that are mirrored on the face. And the face tells a story. The lines that we get on those drugs are directly related to mineral deficiencies, and without those minerals, we cannot detox heavy metals from the body. We can't fight parasites. Forget getting rid of the graphene. You can't get rid of it. You cannot detoxify because they're necessary for all intracellular function for detoxification process. It's no different than having a
Yeah.
salt for a battery.
And if
And
you
so,
can't fight parasites, remember Ozempic and like GLP-1s have been on the market in a different capacity from before because this all because just like things like the original blue pill, the boner drug,
Viagra, yeah.
Viagra, right? It was serving a different purpose, and then
Correct.
they made money on the side effect, and they had to change people's psyches about it, right? We've gone through an extreme, right? But I don't mean to derail your thought, but I'll get this going, and it'll
Oh, you're fine. I can
advance
carry.
it quickly. So yeah, for that very long period of time, especially in the '90s, with the goddamn skeletal thin. I mean, I'm sitting there as a boy looking at what makes me a little excited, and I'm just like, what is this, right? You know, especially when you noticed, you know, a lot, like it was just a lot of those elitist modeling fucking shots. So the woman's got this real, like, there ain't nothing fucking sexy about the look on her face either. And she's all like with her feminine form, but, you know, very kind of, I suppose it's a masculine aura per se, even though you still kind of saw it in there because you definitely saw like 1% of the time flipping through one of these magazines. Well, there's the androgynous one or the same model doing an androgynous shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all in there. The whole impossible beauty standards thing, which was a very psychologically framed way for things. And I think that after so many years of that through the 2000s, something broke in the woman's psyche and is related to the marketing one way. I don't know which one's the
Mm-hmm.
cause of the effect. And it was like giving up, especially with ignorance of nutrition that was forthcoming, and just falling into all the carbs, falling into all the everything of what is naturally designed to make a luck me. But so it's flipping again. And we need to really talk about how we, you know, you want to talk about mental health. Why don't we talk about the psychological primers of how we're forcing people to adjust to societies? Because, you know, my problems growing up was based on nobody there to tell me how to say no to everything I just didn't want to fucking do. Because deep down inside, I didn't know Jeffrey Epstein existed, but I could feel his dirty hands touching me. Because, funny enough, everything that came out in the Epstein files is everything I avoided when I was growing up in the fucking
Mm-hmm.
90s.
Yeah.
How did that
I
fucking
mean,
happen? Probably because Tyr had my back. Keep going.
that's right. There you go. There you go. So, you know, they've FDA has given clearance to give GLP-1s to 9-year-olds, and so this is going back to the whole, um, you know, unfortunately, what happened. Okay, so especially on a woman, when you lose your fat, you get super skinny, your period will stop. Okay, so you become infertile. And if your estrogen production, which is made in your fat cells, is drastically altered before you reach puberty, before you reach your teenage years, this goes back to, you know, population engineering. Pretty much anything that they offer is going to go back to that in some form. You know, it's like the totalitarian tiptoe. This is like the genocidal tiptoe of, you know, ensuring that it's hard to give birth one way or another through biologic function, toxicities, radiation, whatever. Um, Living the life to the fullest for what you came here to do and having self control and eating whole foods. I was in this genetics course just recently, and it was explained to me that an adipose cell is reach an inflammatory state due to toxicity that causes someone to be obese in the same way that a bone cell has inflammation and causes arthritis. So it's like arthritis for your adipose tissue. And so if you have that from toxicity, from eating all this GMO processed fast food nastiness, you know, most of this stuff is not even food, really. Um, it's going to give you chronic inflammation, and inflammation is the root of all evil in your brain, in whatever. That's what causes dementia. It's what causes heart disease, arthritis. You could go on and on and on. And so, getting back to eating whole foods, you know, I just made a barter deal for services with a Mennonite farm. And I'm like, I'll give you all the health care you want for organic eggs and beef, you know, or vegetables or whatever your deal is. I know not everyone eats meat, you know, and each to their own. I'm not here to dictate that whatsoever. Um, but we've got to get back to whole foods. Like if you don't know what the ingredients are and it looks like you're summoning a demon when you read the ingredients label, don't eat it. You know, we've got to get back to that. And having self-control, there's nothing that's going to replace that. And drinking clean water. You know, they've got reverse osmosis machines on the internet now. I saw one for $40 the other day. That's unprecedented. And it's going to be required at some trees, especially Mexico, but it's hard to find here. That is one of the most powerful trees, especially Mexico, but it's hard to find here. That is one of the most powerful antioxidants that you can get. But there are, of course, other ones. Your plate should look like a rainbow every day. Taking a shot made of an analog synthetic of Gila monster venom is not going to be a long-term solution. And, you know, I personally have gotten off of all pharmaceuticals back in November. It was what my body was screaming, and I have felt so much better. I don't even know what's in some of that stuff. You don't know. I mean, they don't list the inactive ingredients, and they're not calling anything active ingredient, even though it's completely toxic. Like they do put fluoride as an inactive ingredient in many antidepressants. And they don't say that, and it's not listed. And, you know, they change people. There are long-term side effects from these, including your brain shrinking overall as a whole for almost all antipsychotics because of the depletion of neurotransmitters, you know, that it turns your brain off. And you do feel left. It reduces your emotional spectrum. And I would say that GLP-1s are going to do this as well because it takes away your desire. The circuit for sex and passion and food and all of those things are on the same circuit in the brain. And so when you diminish that, and they are doing massive studies right now, microdoses of GLP-1s is very effective for alcohol addiction. You know, so you have to weigh out which one's worse if you're a severe alcoholic. You can stimulate electricity a little. You can stimulate electricity a little bit to the ear. All the cranial nerves are in the ear. This one point right here, it's right there. It's called your shin min. This is the breaker box to your whole body. Most people that have been through trauma, physical or emotional, at some point in their life, have a decreased energy. It's right there in that little corner, right there. You can press on that. And here, this is your vagus nerve, and stimulate these areas just like you would with acupuncture and cause calming and reduced desire for lowering your appetite. These things are not taught, you know, so it's a trip. I know, right? You ever see kids get upset and they rub their ears?
Right.
It's a self-soothing, like swimming or something, you know?
Yeah.
That's real.
I don't know exactly what buttons to press, but I am aware that there's stuff with the ear, stuff with the feet. So once in a while, it's just like, oh, what's going on? Yeah, I'll try the ear thing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll just fucking rub around until I feel better, right? I'll do that. Like I'll literally just push every button.
You know what I'm seeing though in the marketing for GLP-1s and all of these restaurants and fast food and even in the store. By the way, that's 1 in 8 people have been prescribed GLP-1s now in the United States. An eighth of the population is taking them, which is why liquor sales are down 50%. And violent crimes are down 50%. And the prison industrial complex, I'm sure, is just rolling over and just saying no big deal, right? Yeah. And so they find other laws to pass to get their people in. And because they're not, you know, these are for-profit businesses, you know, and so they.
Right. But you know what? Yep. A whole bunch of lobbyists were spending a whole bunch of money on the antipsychotics industry, which is what that whole thing was about. And you know, I'm sorry, but the antipsychotics that may be changing now are the same antipsychotics that are part of every fucking pattern MK Ultra Manchurian Candidate, so on and so forth. Antipsychotics have completely fucked up the psyche of the nation. Right, you know, it's all like running lockstep with, you know, opioid issues, and it's one thing, the medicine that's addressing the damage being done physiologically, but I think we also need to remember there's the psychological to it. There's what's going on in your mind when you were the person fixated on the 90s anorexic to the 2010s obese, right? What was going on in your mind flip, especially for women, right? And, then that carrying into this logic, right?
Yeah, in the night, I don't know what a lot of people were going through broken families. A lot of people were going through being a latchkey kid and being left out home alone from our generation. Psychedelics were heavy around. I mean, they have generations of them. Of course, it was X in the 90s, which was all government controlled. Mark Devlin goes into that in depth. Versions of fentanyl. You could you a urine drug screen on somebody and they're on fentanyl. They'll tell you, and they're showing the symptoms. But there's 19 analogs of fentanyl right now that don't even show up on drug tests. And because they're all synthetic, they're just one molecule off from the next, and people don't even know what they're taking. They'll come in and test for everything that other than what they said. Most people have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. And and that's a reflection of things. See, people that don't pay attention, they don't understand certain things. Like, how did he get away with the crime, right?
How did he get away with what?
The crime, just the crime, right? Like, here's our biggest example. The 20 like it was the 2020, it was the beginning of 2020, just because the impeachment process was a big part of what kicked off 2020, right? Why did they find nothing? Why did Robert Mueller show up empty-handed? And you see, he was given a certain limited, what do they call it? Limited scope of investigation or something, right? Or scope of interest. Or the point is that they who commission the investigation tell you are limited to these records to conduct your investigation. And basically all you're doing is looking through records, and any one of those records that leads to a place you're not allowed to look, well, that's it. Because you're not following a crime. You're cleaning up an issue with a place that. So get fucking real and take personal responsibility.
Exactly. You can't, you have to have a parallel system to operate in, because their system is inverted on every level from every angle. The best I can tell, it has been for a very long time. It seems to be getting more perfected with technology and the addition of AI, of how they can hone in the inversions. But the psychological aspects, most people don't pick up on. They always give you the wrong talking points. It's never about, whatever they say it is, it's not going to be about that. Like if they're pointing to Epstein, it's because they're covering up 2020. If they're pointing at 2020, it's because they're covering up Epstein. They're covering up the gross degradation of morality, of human goodness, of femininity and true masculinity. It's all a war against all that.
Has anybody
have not said no?
Right. Has anybody asked if Justice Kavanaugh is got pure intentions, considering that Jeffrey Epstein was very interested in seeing him on the Supreme Court, according to the files, right? Has anybody brought up a Supreme Court justice who is on the Epstein files? No. You expect them to get Trump? If Senator Lou's going to get Trump, he has to also get Kavanaugh, because he has a conflict of interest and
part of the corporation. I mean, they're reinstituting the draft right now. I mean, are we really at a point where we can have a draft and be like, that are we willing to go die for these wars right now, for these PETA wars, basically? I mean, is that where we're at? Like,
I certainly would not.
Got Marines right now becoming conscientious objectors. You know what you have to do to get a Marine to become a conscientious objector?
Yeah, I understand. And it's a fucking terrible and raw deal for the Iranians of the line in the sun, because like the IRGC and the Ayatollah is not even the government of Iran. Ayatollah is a religious figure to the IRGC, which is a parasite paramilitary organization that has more power than the government and tells the government what to do as basically their Nazi party, and that they're the brown shirts. The IRGC are the brown shirts of Iran, right? But
Yep.
the pretense, which I'm trying to explain to Iranians that I love, the pretense is that Americans aren't in this to save you. Unfortunately, listen to them all. They're all religious fundamentalists that want to save Israel, which you want to save too. And as a human fucking being that knows that not every single one of those motherfuckers are the things that we are fighting in the temple, but are certainly the scapegoat on a fucking genetic level. And that this is a horribly raw deal, and none of us understand why the Palestinians need to be abused so much.
One of the better ones, it was Jewish owned. Levi site was torn down. We sent $100 million to Israel, and Arkansas is number 50. We have 46% of children in this state have food insecurity. And I'm looking at, we have the equivalent OBGYN birthing care in Arkansas of a third world country. We have the lowest, mother and child care in the United States. And we're doing all these things. We're more worried about building data centers on former Native American sacred grounds and harvesting commercially the quartz for all of this technology out of our sacred mountains here than we are about feeding our own children. And I've been raged about that. And I'm trying to, like most people, go about my business just to pay bills to, we all have the mundane to deal with, every one of us. And we are so backwards on our goals right now. And every time I hear the government speak, they say nothing to me. Nothing that comes out of that place does anything but harm the land and the people that I know in this place around me. And their long-term goals of harvesting all of Southeast Arkansas's farmland for lithium should immediately cease. I mean, this is where some of the best produce comes from in the United States, is the Mississippi Delta. And this is just my small little circle. I'm talking about my microcosm, but this from all tribes and all colors. It didn't matter. And the Native Americans came here. I see this place, there's a prophecy over this place that people from all tribes will come here and meet at the base of the mountain again. And they're talking about commercially mining out of the back of the mountains here. And I'm ready to do it again. Like, that's where I'm at. I'm sick of this, like something's got to stop. And it's going to take more than some protest where you're playing in a guitar and banging on a bongo drum and acting like a freaking moron. We're going to have to actually have logic and reasoning and be on the correct talking points and not the talking points from the news.
Right. I mean, you have to find a strong enough amount of agreement where anything you do will be ultimately stuff that we don't like because it's government steps up and agrees with us. Because
yeah, I mean, you have to say no, and you have to have a bunch of us to say no. And there's so many people divided right now. You can't even get people to agree on the same color. If it's red, it's blue. If it's up, it's down. I mean, it's constant.
Well,
everybody's so afraid to speak because somebody might be offended. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why everybody needs to tackle a wider breadth of the issue. I didn't just read the Jewish War and the Talmud so I could shit on the Jews. All right? I didn't just do all the trolling that I did with it because I'm trying to fucking tear things that are good down. I take things line item. It's so fucking common to understand some things are binary yeses and nos, and mastering that makes it actually a benefit. It's just part of the rules of Midgard, Okay, it's the rules of running around in the natural order of the manifest world. You just have to
True.
understand where it all belongs, and this is why people are completely in dis-ease.
Yes. Yes, because they've chosen to handle situations without doing it the right way. And back to the GLP-1s, you can't take a shot and expect all your problems to go away when most of it's tied to disharmonic frequencies and resonances in your brain hemispheres. It's what it comes back to is the ratio of energy in between your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. It is what it is. It comes back to your heart rate variability and how you choose to make decisions. And until you get that balance, like you're talking about, you have to have a yes and a no. Yes, there's many nuances throughout the day, but you have to do things right or you'll pay the price. And that price is unfortunately long-term problems. I mean, the new third generation retatrutide that is coming out causes pancreatitis, which is the most painful long-term disease that I know of. I mean, is linked to all kinds of stuff when it comes to that, thyroid cancer as well. And navigating away, it can also cause kidney damage. You know, especially if you have undiagnosed high blood pressure, which is common.
Define for me the what a bad high protein diet, because bodybuilding things, this is like if I'm in the cut, it's not an issue because I'm playing down how much intake. But if I'm on the bulk, I'm upping my proteins. In the fitness world, people calculate things called macros, which is for your caloric intake and burn, and the amount of protein that's necessary for what you're doing.
Okay, so about 85% of the population in some form has insulin resistance because of our diet and because of what we're exposed to when we eat, especially. And then the Roundup and the GMOs all play into that effect because you're eating food that has no nutritional value. Okay, so when you have insulin resistance, it increases your risk of heart attack and stroke significantly. It's also linked to high blood pressure, which is early onset. Whenever you have a lot of protein and you're doing a high protein diet, if you have slightly high blood pressure, so your kidneys are responsible for balancing all this out. When you consume a lot of protein, it can be hard on your kidneys. It'll cause your creatinine and BUN to be elevated, which is blood urea and nitrogen. And so that stresses your kidneys. And so you have to drink a lot of water. Now, for somebody that is perfectly healthy, that's young, that's fit and all that, that's great. But for somebody that's older, that I understand. That's fun.
Yeah, it's all good. All right, so we're gonna go off camera and gonna do it all radio show like. So,
Okay. Do I need to turn mine off?
yeah, I want to see
Okay.
if that stops any of the hiccups for the rest of the show.
Okay, I'm looking
But
right now. Hold on
you
one
look
second.
gorgeous today. Thank you for dolling up.
Thank you. Okay, how's that?
Okay, sounds good. All right, so A and Z are here. Hey, look at that from start to finish. Or we're from Arizona. In fact, my buddy Corey at the Phoenix Enigma just tuned in chat to say hi. And how's it going, my man? If you want to have Ashley on your show next time you go, you feel to go live or something, let me know. All right.
Hold on, I'm looking in the chat. See if I can't see anything.
Okay.
Well, let's see. Where were we?
Shoot, you were going over. We were talking about the protein and the
So that's how So basically, your kidneys are built like thousands of layers of coffee filters on top of each other with micropores in them. The internal pressure of your kidney, this is hard to believe, is around 1200 psi. and it is a lesser gradient. And put the fruit in the refrigerator, because that's not what you're using. You do 2 quarts of distilled water and take all of the skin and the leaves and boil it down to a quart. And you will drink half of that in the morning and half of it in the evening. And you'll do that every day for 9 days. And it completely turns kidney stones into dust.
Okay, that's yeah, that's quite simple, isn't it?
It is insanely simple. That's how medicine was supposed to be. That's how it was written about in the Materia Medicas, which you can find online,
Yeah, yeah.
mostly free. And if anybody wants to have access to some Materia Medicas that are more up to date, I'm happy to drop a link. I can give you in the comments for whenever you post this fully in the end.
The
Because
yeah, again with that whole psychedelics thing that happened
yeah,
yesterday, right? I made the point about, oh yeah, we know what the lobbyists are doing, right? But there's also some of the things that were heard, because it's, remember this law is also, regardless of what they're corrupting, there's a mindset, a forced new narrative, and then you ask yourself, does that narrative, what do you got to deal with that narrative? I listened to that narrative. I said, like, I can deal with this new system, right? Because there are incredibly important things coming through on top of everything we have to deal.
let's go back, okay? We're going to go
Yes.
back a little bit further. Howard Lotsoff was back, okay? We're going to go
Yes.
back a little bit further. Howard Lotsoff was the one that first discovered this in the U.S. Of course, this has been used by the Bitwe tribe since time immemorial. But Howard Lotsoff went over to Africa and did a ritual initiation with the Bitwe tribe and learned that it cured his opiate addiction. I think he was on heroin at the time. And he got the patent for ibogaine. Ibogaine is the synthetic form, just like cocaine is the synthetic form of coca. So he maintained that patent, and I understood it. Now, I could be wrong on how it's changed, that they made it illegal as soon as he got the patent for it. That was 1965. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my history. Whenever I decided to get out of the ER where I had been working, I accidentally discovered a 35-page drug monograph on ibogaine when, for whatever reason, that day I accidentally typed in addiction cure instead of addiction treatment whenever I had had a fentanyl overdose that was intubated, as I was beginning discharge planning in the ER, as we often do for this patient. And I did it in the micromedics, which is where you look up every drug available, and instead of on the community resources intra-network that we had, and it pulled up an entire drug class of addiction interrupters. And so I read through that. I printed it off. I couldn't believe that there was a drug class called addiction interrupters. I thought, how was this left out of every single medical textbook? And how did none of these doctors, I went to every doctor that I ran into in that entire hospital and said, have you heard of this? And they looked at me like I was speaking Swahili. And I just couldn't get over it. And at the time, know what it does. The drug monograph was printed in the late 60s. This is fully studied. Everything is already known. Okay. What they're doing is controlling this grandfather spirit plant. They're taking it under governmental control, and they're taking out the initiation rites that was supposed to go with it, which they've always done, and they are going to put it in a pharmaceutical setting with some feel-good music so that you can't be in nature, because when you do that plant in nature, things happen and memories awaken and DNA is unlocked. And so they want it controlled as much as possible, just like they have everything else. And anytime you can guarantee that there's a mainstream narrative where they want you to go and, they're promoting the use of sacred initiation rites under governmental control, you're going to realize that there's an ulterior motive. And it may not be fully understand. I have absolutely 100% faith in that plant. But that plant, you have to be off of every drug for 3 to 6 weeks before you can even take it, because taking that drug while still having something like fentanyl or alcohol or even marijuana in your system can cause severe cardiac arrhythmias with a prolonged QT on your EKG, and you can have a flat out heart attack. It requires EKG screening before you can even take it. There's an advanced cardiac course for nurses that requires a specialized certification before you can even administer that. You have to be in a specialized setting. Then you've got all these Western medical people who are still, I mean, a lot of them promoting the big V word. With such lack of consciousness, you're going to take somebody into one of the harshest, most intense 36-hour psychedelic experiences. Playing with the Joker card with Trump. That's who he is. That's what the Trump card is. Playing with the Joker card with Trump. That's who he is. That's what the Trump card is. It's the Joker card. And
Yeah.
anything that's involved in that situation right now, I mean, it's a Joker card. It can play any role. It could be good, it could be bad, but I guarantee you it's not going to benefit the people. Not the real people on the ground that I see. That I'm sitting in my office right now looking out the window and watching people carry their belongings behind them in a wagon. They don't care about those people. The technology to get people off of drugs through neuromodulation by alternating frequencies to the ear has been well known and available since the late 50s, was honed in the about 1968 to 74. The doctors and scientists that developed these neuromodulation frequency protocols through cranial nerves that cause you to produce your own endorphins. And by the way, there's a frequency for every drug, has been around now for more than 50 years. It would be free. It costs $10 to make if they would release the frequencies, and every single person could start producing their own neurohormones again with the brain waves back where they're supposed to be. It could be a Walkman device that somebody had at home and they will not release it. It's been out there. I work with it. I've already detoxed 40 something people. I have relationships with all of them. It's got a 90% success rate in 2.5 years. You don't have to have cardiac arrhythmias. Now, if you want to go have an initiation ritual in nature, more power to you. If you want to just do ibogaine to get off drugs, for someone who is not ready to integrate their consciousness because their flower is not ready to be opened, that is their conscious state, in their mind, because they're
So literally be like on a hair trigger, and we'll give everybody a second to hop in, but we're gonna try and fix this. I hope you're even getting this message. I'm told by and large the stream has been good, but I had to trash last time when I did Vinny Eastwood and then upload from his end, right? And I don't think you're gonna have this on your end. So we'll be right back in